We are speaking today with President Henry B. Eyring, first counselor in the First Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. President Eyring served as the 10th president of BYU, Idaho, then Ricks College, from 1971 to 1978. Welcome, President Eyring. We're glad to have you with us today.
So nice to be with you.
I'd like to begin by just discussing a few things you may have experienced prior to coming to campus. What did you know about the school before you were invited to serve there?
Just a little bit. I had grown up in New Jersey and gone to school after my family moved me to Utah, in Utah, but then away to school after that. And so I was a person who had not much opportunity to learn about Ricks College. And so I knew very little. I knew there was a Ricks College, and that's about it.
What was your initial reaction when you learned that you were going to be invited to serve at the university?
I need to say a little of how that happened. I was a professor at Stanford University, had been there for 9 years, and had tenure, which meant that I was expecting to stay there for the rest of my career, and got a phone call at my office at Stanford from Elder Neil A. Maxwell, not then elder, he was the new commissioner of education. I guess I knew that. I'd met him once before in my life. He called me at my office and said, "I'd like to see you." And I said, "Well, if I'm ever in Salt Lake City, I'll be sure to give a call." And he said, No, I mean tomorrow. And I thought, well, I have classes to teach. And I said, he said, "Well, you can get someone to take those for you, can't you?" And I said, "Yes. And I'll come see you tomorrow in Salt Lake." So I got a plane to fly up and went to my father's home. He knew my father because they'd been at the University of Utah at the same time. So he met me in my father's living room, sitting on the couch in a ski jacket. And I thought, well, this is an informal, pleasant sort of thing. And I sat down next to him. My father got out of the room, probably listening in the kitchen to see what was happening. And Brother Maxwell said, first words out of his mouth, "I'd like to ask you to be the president of Ricks College." I had never conceived of having there'd been no contact with me at all of any kind. He asked me to be the president of Ricks College, sitting there for essentially the first time, other than I had met him once casually at a talk. So I said, well, I'll have to think about it. And he said, well, you can think about it all you'd like to. We'll be seeing the First Presidency tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. And so I went downstairs in the bedroom where I used to live in my parents' home, waiting for this surprise interview. And I prayed and asking what this was about. I had no intimation at all about this. So I went in to see the First Presidency. Harold B. Lee and N. Eldon Tanner met me in the First Presidency's room, a room where I now go all the time. And President Joseph Fielding Smith was not there, and he walked in the room, said not a word, and sat down between the two of them after we'd been talking for a while, and never mentioned, in a 1-hour interview, never mentioned Ricks College. And so all I knew, I'd been asked the night before to be the president of Ricks College, and here I was meeting for the first time with the First Presidency. And at one stage in the middle of it, President Joseph Fielding Smith had not said a word. President Lee hit his knee. President Smith is sitting between the two of them and said, "Do you believe this could be the prophet of God?" And I said, "I know it is." That's it. Other than that, we just talked about youth, and they knew I was a bishop in California, and just that's all. And after this 1-hour interview with the First Presidency, never mentioning Ricks College in the interview at all, I then walked out and saw the presiding bishopric was waiting. I now know, having later been they were waiting for 1 hour for their regular meeting while I had this strange interview with the First Presidency. And Elder Maxwell took me out to put me in a cab to go back to California and said, "Well, you've got the job if you want it." It had never been discussed with the First Presidency. I had no idea what it was all about. Got in the cab and went back to California, and I began to pray about what it was. And I think it's a little too personal to say, but got an answer that this is my school. And so I called Elder Maxwell and said, "I'm coming." So I knew nothing of the job, knew nothing about what was going on, knew only that the school existed, but I had already been hired. I guess hired is the word. So then I arrived at Ricks College with only that introduction, had never been on the campus, had never seen, knew essentially nothing about it. So that's how I got there.
Wow, that's remarkable.
It was very remarkable. And I only know that later, as I was being inaugurated, one of the members of the search committee, there had apparently been a search committee,